everybody, welcome back to the channel and thanks for tuning in. In the last video I got the garage door openers installed and that completes the garage level for now. The next steps down there will be insulation and drywall, but we're going to hold off until the second floor is complete and we're going to do it all at once. And speaking of the second floor, that's where I am now. Right now it's one big open room, but I'm sure you can see from the title of the video that we're going to be framing it in. But first things first, I got to get some work lights installed. Here we go. So I just got home to a lumber order. Now when I was ordering the lumber, I was quite surprised with the pricing. I know at the peak of the pandemic I was paying $9.90 for a 2x4. And right now they're at $4.95, so we're at half price of 6 months ago. So it's good, and now all this lumber hopefully keeps me busy. So I got my supervisor with me today over there. I'm just starting to bring up some of the lumber. All of the interior framing is going to be 2x4 framing. If you never noticed with the 2x4, it actually measures out at 3.5 by 1.5 inches. It gets the name 2x4 from when it makes it to the sawmill. When the log ends up at the sawmill, one of the first steps is to rough cut. And in this case, this is a really rough cut board. It measures out at 4 inches by 2 inches. Now after it makes it from the rough cut stage, it goes through a planer and all the edges get cleaned up and it helps create a little bit of a straighter board. So some of the sizes that I got depends on how long the wall is going to be. 2x4s usually start at 8 feet and they come in 2-foot increments all the way up to 16 feet. In this case I have an 8, a 10 and a 12. Now this one here on the side, it's actually just a little bit shorter than the 8-foot 2x4. So this one here comes in at 92 and 5/8. So that is a pre-cut stud. So a pre-cut stud helps with the finished wall. Now this is a 2x6 exterior wall, but it'll show us what we're trying to get to. If the bottom is 1.5 inches, and then you have your stud, and then you have 2 top plates on top. By the time you bring your drywall down and you bring your floor up, then you're going to end up with 8 feet from the top of your floor to the top of the drywall. So that's pretty handy when you order your drywall. It comes in lengths 4 feet wide by however long. Now it does come in some other sizes, but for the sake of it, if you put a 4-foot sheet here and a 4-foot sheet there, by using a pre-cut stud, it actually adds a little bit of a gap, so it's easy to get the drywall in, and then that gap, it gets taken up with your trim around all your floorboards. So that's what we're going to match today by getting 2x4 studs and then getting all the sill plates and the top plates at different lengths. I will have to cut them for sure. You can find studs in other common sizes for 9-foot walls, 10-foot walls, and I believe 12s. I'm sure there's some other sizes out there, but when you get into the part of custom framing, this wall here is only a 5-foot wall. So in that case, they don't make 5-foot studs. I had to order a 10-footer and then go through and cut that in half to help frame out the front wall. So in the case of the studs, it's not much cheaper when you go to purchase them, as I believe the stud was about 3 cents cheaper, but it does save you a lot of time when you go to the framing stage. So I'm just starting to get the air compressor set up. That's going to run the air nailer. This is a Bostitch 3 1/4 air nailer. So you buy the nails in a box, they come all together like this, and then you will throw them in. I think it holds 100, and then you can go through, and as quick as I can pull the trigger, this can fire out nails. But it's handy, I can set this just out the door and then run the hose up so I don't have to listen to the compressor run. Now of course you gotta be careful with the nails flying out. I did catch myself in the summer. That ended up in a hospital visit and a tetanus shot, so of course just be conscious of where you're firing these things because it comes out with a bang. So I got my computer set up behind me. That's gonna be my little workstation that has all of the blueprints for the second floor. I was gonna print these drawings off and have them, but it's kind of nice to have the computer here.
They're in the computer.
They're in the computer?
So I got the sill plate and the top plate. I got them cut. They ended up being cut at 13.5 feet, but that's not 13 foot 5 inches. The Imperial system does get pretty funky. Definitely makes it a lot harder for dividing stuff out and moving some numbers around. 13.5 feet is actually 13 foot 6 inches. That's stuff you're going to run into along the way. You got to double check your drawings. Like if you're drawing stuff up in your own program, sometimes it won't switch the dimensions, you'll have to go find the setting to do that. But Imperial makes it pretty tough for dividing stuff up. 0.2 of a foot doesn't mean that it's going to be 2 inches. That'll put you at just over 2.5 inches, I think. I'd have to actually grab the calculator. But I want to go over some of those numbers and some of those quick tricks later on. That's going to be coming up in one of the future videos. But for now, I got the sill plates and the top plates laid out. I'm going to go through and start marking out all the stud locations. Again, there's a lot of information here that I could go over 20 videos just on setting up the framing, but the one thing to keep in mind, I'm going to go on 16-inch centers. That's the spacing of the studs. That's the same spacing as what the exterior walls look like. 16 inches fits into 4 feet and 8 feet, which is perfect for material size. You could be looking at it and saying, well, 2 feet will as well. And that's right, 2 feet does fit in and meet those needs. 2 foot spacing in construction is common as well. Sometimes you'll see it, the truss spacing up here, it's on 2 foot centers. All this spacing comes down to is what loads are you trying to deal with. And in the case of the interior framing, it's up to me, but if I go down to 16-inch centers, it's just gonna make a sturdier wall, especially with these walls, they're gonna be quite tall once you get towards the middle of the house. By adding that extra stud, it's not gonna cost much more. I might be $100 on the whole project just to add those extra studs on the interior wall, and it just makes a stiffer wall. That's just going to prevent drywall from cracking. But getting back to here, I want to start marking this out on 16-inch centers, and I'm going to mark the bottom and the top of the wall at the same time to make sure everything's going to line up square once I put all the studs together. Don't see screws too much in wall construction. If you look at the building code, they have the nail specification. I've heard of some structural screws coming out. I will have them out in a couple spots, mostly when I go to stand the wall up. Screws are nice because you can take them in and take them out pretty quick. So when I get the wall up, if it's just me today, it might be a little bit harder to set level and to set square with these walls for the first time around. So I can pop the wall up, put a screw in, and then I take some measurements. And you'll see once I get going here with the air nailer how much quicker it is than putting in screws. Anyway, a long story to what we're doing, but here we go. We'll lay this out, knock it together, get it stood up. One thing I noticed when I was starting to mark out the wall, I forgot to mention here, was how a tape measure makes things quite simple. You can see the 16-inch mark has the red on it. 32 does as well, 48, and then 16 inches past that. Because it's quite simple, you can 16, 32, 48. Once you get going past that though, it takes a couple seconds to add those up, and then there's a lot of room for error there. So it's nice that it's on the tape. One thing you'll see me wearing is some headphones, especially in an open space like this. It's gonna really echo through it, and these things are quite loud. So anyway, back to the time lapse. That air nailer makes things really quick. It's not too hard to set up. So that only took a couple minutes. Put all the nails in, and before I lift it up, I'm gonna put a diagonal brace on it. That's just gonna keep everything square, especially if it's just me. It's a good sized wall to put up on my own, so just gonna make sure I go through a couple steps to keep it square and keep it supported. You can have a rectangle or a square that has matching sides or all equal sides, but if they get shifted a little bit, measuring from corner to corner is gonna help get that back into perfectly square. So I'm ready to start standing up the wall. I got this one brace on the end. You'll see when the wall comes up, it's gonna come down and act like a little bit of a kickstand. That's gonna give me a place to screw this wall up just to get it supported. So you see all the bracing lumber, I avoid cutting it. It's gonna come off and get reused once we start adding more walls. It's the interior structure is gonna start holding itself up, so we don't wanna waste any material. This brace that I put on, it's keeping all the weight. It's kind of holding the wall up straight. It's just leaning back a little bit. So now I'm just gonna go through, put a couple screws in, and double check my dimensions, and then that will leave us at the first wall done. So I got the first wall standing, but it's not quite complete. I still got to finish up all of the framing to get to the ceiling. So in normal construction, this wall framing would be perfect. You'd have your flat ceiling, and then when you stand this wall up, you're basically complete. You'll see, like I had to do on the end wall, we'll have to add all the studs up top to get to the ceiling. So I covered the roof line in one of the other videos. We got the slope up here is steeper than the slope or the pitch at the back of the house. And the reason for that is the existing stone house is 20 feet wide, and then when we went to go with the addition, we're 26 feet wide. So we wanted to match the front angle of the house. So if you can picture the house, it kind of has a standard roof line to it. and we wanted the roof line of the front side of the house, like the slope of it, to match from the addition to the existing house. So by keeping that roof line the same, we had to extend out the back. So now that this roof line stays the same, this back angle there's a little bit less of a pitch, and it ends up a little bit longer. So holding that up, you can kind of see how the roof line is shorter on this side, and then the roof is quite a bit longer on the back side. So we're heading into the second day. This is Sunday morning. I think it's -9 outside. That puts it at about -5 in here. It does have the insulation on the outside, but with no heat in here, it kind of holds the cold in rather than keep the heat in. But that's not too bad to deal with. I'm dressed for it. I just got home from taking Willow for a walk down on the family farm. It's nice to be able to go down and enjoy the land. So hopefully this morning I can get started to the framing right away and start some walls and get them standing pretty quickly. One thing I wanted to point out with all the terminology going on is there's not always a right way to name some of these parts. A good example is at the bottom of the wall. Sometimes it's a sill plate, sometimes I'll call it a bottom plate. I've heard it be called a shoe plate. It depends on people's experience and their background. Sometimes it's region based, such as different countries or different areas. Sometimes it's generations. It's like my father and my grandfather. Sometimes they have a different name for something as opposed to what I've learned more recently. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you want to call it. You're still trying to get your project done. This is just something to be aware of when you're talking with contractors or if you're working with the building supply stores, what you're trying to order, what you're trying to accomplish. Sometimes you got to interpret what they're trying to say, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Sometimes it's a little intimidating if they have more experience, but if you explain yourself and your end goal is to finish your project as the best you can, there's no fault in asking them to clarify what they're talking about and even clarifying what you're trying to explain. A good example is like what I explained earlier with a 2x4 8 feet long and an 8-foot wall stud, which is 92 inches long. I've gone into the building supply before and I've asked for an 8-foot 2x4, and I've also went in and I've asked for an 8-foot wall stud. But there have been times when I ask for an 8-foot wall stud and I will get a true 8-foot 2x4. Now that actually works in my favor. It's not a big deal to cut it down, but if I'm ordering a couple hundred, obviously I don't want that. So I've gotten into the habit now of going in and asking for an 8-foot 2x4 or asking for a 2x4 and 92 and 5/8 long. That way there's very little confusion when it comes to the ordering. I'm getting to the point where I'm framing in a doorway. This is going to be one of the bedroom doors. So when you're framing in a door or a window, you're always looking for the rough opening. So I can just go online to Home Depot and find out what door I want to choose. And for this door, I'm going to go with a 32-inch door. That means the rough opening is going to be 34 inches in between this stud and this stud. That allows room for shims and the door jamb to fit in between there. And the height of most doors is common. This rough opening is going to be 82 inches, and that's for an 80-inch door opening. Again, you're accounting for space to shim everything and then space for the door jamb itself. On the outside here, these are the king studs, and then on the inside, these are the jack studs. Just remember, a jack is like for a car jack, it's holding something up. For a door, it's going to be holding up this header. Now, there's a few ways to build headers in construction. With this wall, it's a non-load bearing wall. So I doubled up the 2x4s on their edge. So you can see the 2x4s fit in there nicely. I've seen it before where you can put a 2x4 sideways like this, but that's the wood in its weakest state in that direction. You're always trying to overcome gravity, so by putting the 2x4s on their edge and doubling them up, you get that much more support. So I mentioned earlier that a 2x4 is not 2x4, so I have 3 inches stacked here and 3.5. So I do have a 1/2 inch gap that I will fill in later on before I get to the drywall stage. Whether I use 1/2 inch drywall or I could go through with a small 1/2 inch strip of plywood. That's going to give some material for the trim later on to fix to. So all the studs are on 16-inch centers, and then across the top I want to start adding cripple studs. Those cripple studs will take the weight from the top plate down to the header, and then the header will take the weight out to the side posts and then down to the floor. The cripple studs are there again for drywall as well. That's on this 16-inch centers to attach to the drywall. And like I say, this is non-load bearing wall. With a load bearing wall, of course, that header is quite a bit bigger, and it takes the weight of all the trusses on top. So it takes the weight from the truss through the top plate through the header. So the header takes the weight out to the jack posts, and here you can see I got 2 jack posts on each side just because there's a little bit more weight from the roof. So if you're wondering what's up with the staircase and why things might look a little funny as they're framed here. So the stairs were just installed for construction, for bringing material up here and gaining access, as the only other access is through the main house. Now, one of the things that's kind of been bothering me for a while is this space here. You can see how this wall is actually framed over the stairs now. This is going to free up some room in the bathroom, as it was going to be pretty tight. So the bathtub's going to come out all the way over to around here, and then once this was framed in, there actually wasn't much clearance by the time you get a finished wall and a finished tub in there. It was actually going to be quite narrow, and I wanted to open that up a little bit. So since the staircase is coming out, that's getting framed in for a walk-in closet. So that's going to be the entranceway, and then I framed over the stairs. For now, I just put that board in there to represent where that wall is going to go, and I kind of like that. I marked things out on the floor where the walkway is going to be. So now I got to cover that floor in, and I'm actually going to take the stairs out, but I'm going to reinstall them the other way. So you're actually going to come up this way and then over and then back up, and then you'll come out through this doorway. And like I mentioned earlier, this doorway, it's going to be for a walk-in closet that's going to get framed in. I think that's going to wrap up the video for today. I know I'm getting tired, it's getting dark out. I'm ready to go in and eat some dinner and get this video edited up. So that's the start of the framing for upstairs. All of the walls that I could use full studs on, they're all framed in. I still got quite a bit of work to do to add a top plate and get to the ceiling. The only walls I didn't add in are against the front. That's going to be all custom size, so I'll have to cut every stud in order to fit that. And now it's not very much. I only have to end up cutting, I think, 1.5 inches off all the studs, but it's still quite a bit of work. That's going to be for another weekend, and I will film that along the way. I appreciate you guys following along this far. I got quite a few videos before this, and there's sure to be a lot after this. If you hit the like button, that'd be great. It shows me that you like these videos. I will make sure to keep putting them out. The more likes I get, the more subscribers I get, the quicker I'm going to put these videos out, as I know there's some interest in them. And again, feel free to leave a comment if you got any questions, or if you even want a custom video of something along the way. I'd be all for making some custom videos of different projects around here to share my experience and help people along the way with their projects as well. So for now, I am signing off, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.